If homework and chore time feel like chaos, this live is for you. We're diving into what ADHD can look like in daily life and simple, proven strategies that actually help kids focus and follow through to feel successful. You know about this firsthand as well, and not to put you on the spot, but I know we've talked a little bit before about how
Yeah.
ADHD can present differently in certain kids. But specifically for today, we know parents can relate to this, teachers can relate to this, but in the household, real life daily battles, like every evening, you know that there's going to be a homework war because your child has homework and they don't want to do it. So there's lots of procrastination and arguing and nagging from us as parents. Can you relate to that? I guess we'll start with that.
Yeah. So I see it actually more prevalently with our college student.
Mm,
And I think my journey or my experience with it has been, it wasn't so obvious. And I think that's the thing that stands out to me is like initially, it really wasn't on my radar for my two kiddos. Both my boys have now been informally diagnosed, not formally yet, but informally diagnosed by a therapist. And what we really noticed was with my oldest specifically in high school, it was constantly forgetting things. So having to show up at school and drop off cleats and then a laptop and then this and then that and then staying up really, really late to complete assignments. So, he would get A's and B's. And so in my mind, I'm like, oh, he's just busy, just procrastinating. But where it really started to hit hard is in college. And I think it's trying to manage multiple priorities, much larger expectations from an academic standpoint, and a lot of competing priorities. So you have things like, I want to go hang out with my friends. I want to go to the gym. I have to work. I have 17 assignments and 40
mhm.
reading. The list is just huge and it's a lot. And so having to, really help him learn how to better prioritize his time, chunk his time into more meaningful, chunks that will help him accomplish things with a lot less stress. Even just getting dates on calendars. I cannot tell you how many times I'm like, buddy, did you put it on the calendar? So it's something that seems as basic, as simple as that to like a person that's very easy for is very, very challenging for him. And so yeah, it's definitely something that has been, a big, big challenge in our household and really something that's been top of mind. Just trying to figure out how do you accomplish this? How do you
Yeah,
get him going in the right direction? Because I can feel I'm stressed because I'm paying for college and I want him to get through and graduate. And
right.
he's stressed because, he wants to succeed and this task feels so big for him, at times. And it as a parent, I think it breaks my heart when I feel like, this is so hard and how do I help him as a parent?
Yeah.
It can feel very defeating and I guess sad at sometimes I would say like I just try all the time. It's lots of conversations, it's lots of, trying different things, but there are tools and techniques that work really well. And I think like just top level, since I know we wanted to talk about signs and symptoms, I can kind of like go over those, but there's really kind of like three categories of ADHD. So you have the inattention side of it, then you have the hyperactivity side of it, and then you have like impulsivity signs and kind of like a combo kiddo. Like some kids can have both. And again, there's misconceptions that I think you have to be super hyperactive and bouncing off the walls, and that's what ADHD looks like. But that inattention piece can go really easily unnoticed. So like inattention can be, very easily distracted. So they're like tuning out in class. It's like, the squirrel, you're just off looking in the distance and, that sort of thing. They can be very forgetful, so that's an easy thing. They're always forgetting, what they need to bring to school, or
Mhm.
um, you have to they forget they have to get a permission slip signed or what homework is due and when.
I have
um,
that one. I have
yeah,
that
yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah. I know you were saying like running stuff to your daughter all the time for like if she's going to her dad's or if she's in marching band, that
Yep.
kind of thing. It's like forgetting the instruments. Like, buddy, my son was like,
How
you
do
have
you
football
forget
practice
that?
every single day, and my daughter was even like, how are you forgetting the cleats every single day? I drove to Gilbert when we were in Gilbert Public Schools. I don't know how many times I thought I was going to kill him because it was like, oh my gosh, like let's have it set out at the back door so it's there, but no, it gets put somewhere else and forgotten. And I mean, the amount of times this kiddo will leave my house when he goes back to college and forget his like important stuff like his wallet, I'm just like, how do you forget that? He's had to put an Apple AirTag inside of his wallet because he's gotten lucky. It's been turned in twice, but he lost it on a park bench and at the stadium at
Yeah.
ASU. And luckily both times they were turned in, but he put an air tag in there now because he knows he's gonna forget it. And so at least he can ping it
That's
somewhere.
good.
But
So he's planning for it. He's not ignoring
yeah,
it. He knows this is an issue. He's got the
yeah,
air tag to help him.
yeah,
It's one
yeah,
of those safety
100%.
nets. Yeah.
And then like being disorganized, so messy backpack, that's a big thing we hear a lot. Everything's
Yeah.
shoved in there. Nothing is, in any sort of organized fashion. It's crumbled up inside the backpack. Seeing them avoid sustained effort. So again, you give them a task. Oh my, this is going to take so long. I
Yeah.
can't do this, or this is boring. You'll hear a lot of that.
Hmm.
And then just obviously not having, good follow through. So that's kind of what the inattention piece looks like. Hyperactivity, is like restlessness or fidgety. So like my son does do like the thumper leg where he's constantly shaking his
Right.
leg, or they're wiggling, or they're chewing on their sleeve, like they just have to
Well,
constantly be doing something. Leaving their seat when it's not appropriate. So that might be roaming around the room, talking to the classrooms, blurting out that they got to go to the bathroom all the time.
yeah.
My son in this coaching scenario, like over there talking to his friend when, he should be focusing on, dad who's coaching, always on the go. They say it's like kind of like they're a motor. And like, that's the piece that my little brothers were like running around, jumping off the couch, like just always having to be doing something physical,
Hmm.
can be a sign. Talking excessively is also something. So again, they're always talking to their peer. They're not paying attention when it's time to sit and pay attention. And then like the third category would be kind of like that impulsivity. So blurting out answers. So if you're the kid that can't raise your hand and wait your turn, and you're constantly having to, blurt out the answer before the question is even finished, interrupting conversations all the time. So I see that with my little guy. It's like he has the hardest time when we're in the middle of a conversation wanting to
Right.
interject. And I think it's because he knows if he waits even 2 more seconds, it's out of his brain.
Oh, yeah.
And they can't. So difficulty waiting their turn. So I see this like when I volunteer for the field trips in the school. It's like the kid that cannot stand in line and wait two or three kids. And I had one kid throwing himself on the ground, throwing a fit because I was like, buddy, it's going to take like 2 seconds. Like the time that you're, getting upset about this, you're going to be at the front of the line. So that can be really hard. Difficulty waiting. So again, line cutting, rushing ahead, and then acting without thinking. So having like emotional outbursts, grabbing things from students, stuff like
Hmm.
that. So, not one kid is going to look alike. So again, sometimes you have a combination of those things. What we were kind of told was you want to see it show up in two environments. So you can look at school and at home, or at school and in sports, at home and in sports. So
Right.
those are the things that you're typically looking at. Is it showing up in more than one of their environments? And the other thing that I think can be very confusing too for parents is with ADHD, students can hyper focus on things that are of high interest. So like
Hmm.
video games, or um, if they are like my son loves to make videos. He very much loves to do, he has a social media account. He can spend 6 hours putting together an ASU
Yeah.
football video. My other younger son can spend 2 or 3 hours researching how to win this video game. So you think, well, he can sit and focus like that, like there's no way he has focus and attention issues.
I have a question. So you said you have
Yeah.
two sons. One is in college, and both are informally diagnosed. So I think something that would help other parents as well, like with the undiagnosed, how does it present? Does it present differently
Yeah.
between your two boys? And how old is the youngest one?
So my youngest is 8,
Okay.
and I think the biggest misconception, at least that I had as a parent, when it comes to ADHD, is that essentially you think that the child's just going to be, really compulsive, interrupting a lot, super hyperactive. It's hard that inattention or that hyperactivity is sometimes hard to spot if it's not overly obvious. So like with my little guy, like what I noticed was in the classroom, they have these seats that they can kind of like wiggle in. They have very unique seating in his classroom, but he's always kind of moving around in his seat. He's laying over in his seat, or he's getting up, maybe walking around a little bit in the classroom. But again, he does fairly well academically right now. The concern is he doing well academically because he has tutoring support at home and he's a fairly intelligent kiddo? But as things start to get more complex, just like we see with my older child, will that become more difficult because he isn't really paying as close attention in the classroom? The other way it showed up was in like sports scenarios. So like my husband husband coaches football, and our youngest guy would be constantly like, he's a very touchy-feely guy, so like hugging on his teammates,
Oh wow.
talking to his teammates, kind of off staring, off at the, the bird flying in the sky or the airplane overhead, where every other kid is like focused on my husband as he's giving them feedback and direction. He's just like, Emerson is never focusing. He's never
Right.
talking and, or, paying attention. And so I think those were things that like, I just was expecting him to be jumping off the couches, and, his clothes were always a mess, and he was always just looking, not put together. Like those were things that in my mind represented ADHD.
I think
Yeah.
that is one of the biggest misconceptions that I had personally about, and I definitely say past tense had, about
Right.
ADHD before having this tutoring business and being exposed to, I mean, thousands of different students and how they express focus challenges, we'll call it, because it isn't
Right.
always diagnosed as ADHD, whether it's there or not.
Right.
Focus is focus. And so I have noticed that some kids, we haven't talked about this population, but they have
Right.
like, they kind of like disappear, they're absent for a while, they just check out mentally. That's another form of ADHD. But I really thought, I guess, that it was almost impossible to help kids focus if they have ADHD. And you're saying you have two kids that can clearly focus, hyper focus even, for hours at a time. So that's a big
Yes.
misconception. Having ADHD
Huge.
does not mean that you cannot focus. Same thing in school. We hear it a lot from parents. I know you do too. Like,
Yeah.
she's so smart. She should just know how to study, but she's not turning in her homework and she's not studying for tests. She must
Right.
be lazy.
Yeah.
I hear that a
Yeah.
lot. And we do
Yeah.
different assessments, cognitive assessments. We're like, oh no, this kid is super, super bright. It's
Right.
how the information's going in. It's not
Right.
sticking. They have the ability. And that's
Yep.
definitely a
100%.
big thing, is just like ADHD, it is what it is. Like, you have it. But that doesn't mean that you cannot be just as successful as everybody else. You just might need some additional tools and reinforcement.
Right. 100%. And they are very bright kiddos, like very, very bright kiddos. And it's sad because I think they do get kind of labeled as that because
Mm-hmm.
they do have a lot competing in their brain. And they have, that ability to hyper focus, like is a superpower really in
I think
reality. I
so.
mean, like and my husband jokes, I always say, like, I probably have it, and I was never diagnosed because I was a female and females weren't diagnosed. But as I go down the rabbit hole of my, kind of looking into what it looks like for my two boys, and I'm like, oh, wow, I do that, I do that, I do that. But he's like, it's amazing to me when you're really interested in something, like you can put effort into that I could never do. He's like, you could
Yeah.
sit for 6 hours and you could just plug. And he's like, but you get up in the morning and you're like, woo, you're all over the place with, gotta do this, gotta do that, gotta do this. And when you finally get down and sit down and work intentionally, you do well. And ADHD is really, it's an underdevelopment of the frontal lobe of their brain. And eventually that brain will catch up. Eventually you will have more tools and resources, but that doesn't happen until you get into your 30s. And so as adults, I think we enter the workforce and we learn, we go through lots of training, and they try to teach us how to be productive members of
Sure.
their company. And so I learned different things. Like if I take on the hardest task first, then, I won't fret about it all day long. And if I get that done, then everything else just flows really well.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, I know that, and sometimes I still avoid the hardest task and I let it stress me out all day long, and then learning how to, use a calendar and budget your time, and you do eventually catch up. But the thing is that if we could teach children those tools when they are in high school or even earlier than that,
Right.
as soon as they're able, like it will make their life so much easier, because there's nothing more stressful than trying to catch up in school and having the work pile up and up and up, and you have the time to work on it, but you're so overwhelmed by all the tasks that are in front of you that you just shut down. And then
Right.
you'd start to think, I think my son has been through that, like thinking like maybe I'm not capable of getting through college. I mean, we're now to junior year, and we are, he's in some classes finally that he's loving. He's a sports business major, and they have to take all that stuff the first 2 years that you're like, oh,
Yeah.
why do I have to take accounting? Why do I have to do statistics? Like, what's the point of all this? And
Yeah.
now he's finally in some of those sports business classes, and he's finally getting to see the rewards of that education. And but had we given up freshman year, like what a misfortune for him, but
Yeah.
he really did have for a while there, like just a really, really tough time, like not feeling like he was capable or just questioning, like, why can't I do this? Like, I know in my head what I need to do, but I can't put it into action. And
That's
that is
sad.
hard.
Yeah.
It is. It's so hard. And as a parent, you're like, dude, I see you, I hear you, and you try to help.
I would just say, as parents, like, let's not be so quick to say, oh, my kid has ADHD. And I also say, at the end of the day, whether they have it with a diagnosis or not, the tools that we've just talked about today, inevitably you're going to use them no matter what. Medication, no medication. We're going to help our
Yep.
kids with the structure, with the roadmap, and just with the emotional support to help hold them accountable so that, again, they can be
Right.
successful. So I'd say that would probably be my biggest message to parents. And by the way, you're still going to get frustrated along the way. I probably
Of
should just
course.
acknowledge
Oh, I
that.
do.
You're like,
I do plenty of
I
times.
laugh
My
at some
husband
of the
does
things that
plenty
you
of
said because I can totally relate to it. My daughter's
times.
forgetting things. I'm like, how can you forget the uniform on game day? I just
Yeah.
don't understand. But
Like this is an essential thing that you need
right,
for this.
but you know,
And
if
you
we
know
can
you have a game today. I know.
if we can help them laugh at themselves, but also add that air tag to their wallet, I think we've got it covered. It's all good.
100%. I mean, it's one of those things now where I think knowing what you're working with, knowledge is power. They say that all the
Yeah,
time. And I think knowing that also as a parent helps you accept it. I think in the beginning, it's just like, gosh darn it, can you just do the thing, whatever it is.
yeah,
And then when you realize, like, okay, no, this is something that is hard for my child. And, this isn't going to come as simple. So what do we do? And I say it all the time, like, when kids are and you get this a lot in high school, you don't want to have a tutor, you want to feel like you can do this on your own, and our goal is to
mhm,
get you to the place where
right,
eventually you can do it on your
right,
own. But the reality of it is everybody needs help in certain areas. And so what I
sure,
tell my son all the time, because he'll push back on tutoring as well, for certain classes or for certain tool, and I'm like, buddy, we just want to get you to the place where you're on the same playing field as everyone else. Like right now you're here and you don't have the tools to get you from here to here. We want to even out that playing field. And so that's where, that the resources and the strategies
hmm,
and having the tutoring support, just like when you are wanting to learn to play a sport, like you're not going to be the best baseball player ever without a coach running you through the different drills, throwing the ball to you, showing you how to hit the ball, how the actual game of baseball works. Like you don't know that just intuitively on your own. But the sad thing is kiddos accept coaching for sports, but they really
right,
sometimes resist support when it comes to academics. And it's because I think they see it as a weakness,
hmm,
and it just doesn't feel fair that like it's hard for them. But it's like our goal is not to have you be with this person forever. Like some kids take longer than others, but our goal is to get you to a place where we've evened out that playing field. And now you can be successful on your own. And the weight that it will lift off your shoulders and the confidence boost that you will have when you know that you're capable is huge.
yeah,
And, that I think that's your and my goal for every kiddo that we work with is to get them to that place of feeling confident and capable and independent. I think that is
mhm.
a big thing. We don't want them to be dependent on us forever.
No, we really
Um,
don't. And I think that's probably where we'll wrap. Is that's
yeah.
we've gone some how ADHD presents. It's a little different. Sometimes it's a composite of several different types. Also, we've talked about tips on how to help our kids. So, parents, if any of this hits with you, this looks like what you're dealing with at home, or you're hearing this is what's happening in the classroom. Once we get our video posted, comment, share some tips that have worked for you, and never be afraid of getting support.
Yeah, and if you reach out, I mean, if you are questioning, I'll kind of leave with this. Like, my advice to everyone is you start with your pediatrician. We're obviously not here to be able to diagnose, but a
Yeah.
pediatrician can start that baseline assessment. There's forms that they can have, the teacher fill out, the parent fill out, and then usually there's a referral further than that, to a therapist or a clinical psychologist at that point, to get a formal diagnosis. But that's always where we're going to recommend starting. And again, they're going to look in two different sources to see if it's showing up and how it's impacting your child's life. But yeah, I think, yeah, it's definitely been a great conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you for including me on this, Kimberly. And I look forward to further chats with you.
There will be more.